debt which you call a mortgage. And by engaging in this mortgage, you put to work your plumbers and your painters, your gardeners, your architects. You create an economic engine from the simple notion that you bought a house. This idea of a well-managed debt is exactly what I was going for. And in creating the Bank of America, the first national bank, within 30 days, and again, remember, this is an era when information could travel no faster than a galloping horse or a ship at sea. In 30 days, this bank was capitalized, if you can imagine a sum this large, at $10 million. More than all the other banks in America combined, because the rich, the wise, the well-born wanted to be tied to the growth of this country. That bank then would load money to build railroads, bridges, highways, and from that a nation grows. So fundamentally, a nation grows from urban economic growth.
General, I'm afraid that we have time for only one more question.
Do we have time for one more answer?
That remains to be seen, sir.
I will turn to you, sir.
You've mentioned standing army.
We cannot hear you. Perhaps your device. Mr. Jefferson's gewgaw. Can you imagine if Mr. Jefferson was here? You would hear nothing from this machine because he would have already disassembled it, wondering how it works. How the ether flowed from one side to the other.
You've mentioned standing army a couple of times.
Indeed.
What is your view of a standing army?
I strongly support it. Do we have time for another question? A standing army is vital. You are taught by the teachers I mentioned earlier very often that the Revolutionary War was won by Minutemen. It was not. It was won by a professional standing army. At Valley Forge, Baron von Steuben, who was neither a baron nor a von, drilled the troops, creating a professional army. And a professional army, a standing army, is what kept you free then. It's what keeps you free today. And this gentleman is standing. If you have a quick question, sir, I'll be happy to try to respond.
What is your opinion of the Federal Reserve?
What is my opinion of the Federal Reserve? Mr. Jefferson said many foolish things. One thing he said that was not foolish is that the dead should not govern the living. In your day, the Fed is a different notion. But the concept of a central financial institution like my Bank of America, not your commercial version, but the actual Bank of the United States, is an important, vital way in which that well-managed debt gets funded out to build the railroads and the bridges and such. I will say this. When I was one of the founders of the Bank of New York, a private bank in the city of New York, Aaron Burr wanted to open a bank as well because he was desperately in debt and he was hoping to create something that would loan him money. So Burr asked for permission from the regulators to open a bank. He was told no. So instead, he created a thing he called the Manhattan Company, which was going to bring fresh water to the island of Manhattan. Everyone relied on wells, a charter that it could provide some small fiduciary functions. It was created, it promptly loaned him $100,000, which he never repaid. The Manhattan Company dribbled along in human history until it merged with something called the Chase Company. Your Chase Manhattan Bank, if you have a mortgage from there, you are a Burrite. So, let me say this. One of the disadvantages, I'll be with you in a moment, sir, you may sit. You have a disadvantage when you look back at things like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Revolutionary War, because you know what happened. You know that we won. But in that era, in 1776, at Yorktown, at Concord, at all the battles that followed, we were taking on the greatest military machine the world had ever known. The British military, the greatest army ever assembled. And we were taking it on for that simple notion I've mentioned before, if you breathe, you should breathe free. We took on the greatest force ever assembled because we believe that as Americans, your rights include those remarkable truths in the Declaration. The right to create a government in your mind. Remember, until this time, all governments, in theory, in the minds of these motions, were created to support the king. God picks the king. Therefore, to challenge the king is to challenge God. And we said nonsense. Governments are created for men, and when they do not serve our needs, we oppose them, we overthrow them. We began the Revolutionary War with about 25% of Americans supporting independence. About 25% were Tories, and about 50% just wished to be left alone. And over the course of that long war, battle after battle, effort after effort, we slowly ground the British down until they could no longer sustain a war that they did not wish. And a country was born. For the first time in human history, a country was born out of the notion that all men are created equal and that governments exist for that purpose. You are the sons and daughters of men and women who took up arms so that your generation and subsequent could be free. And I am told that in your day, half of you don't vote. I'm sure not in this audience. You are the spawn of revolutionaries. You have been handed a creed of liberty and freedom, spawned in the blood of thousands, committed to the idea that as Americans, you are free. I thank you for your time.
Alexander Hamilton, everybody.